I see this over and over again with SaaS companies. They start advertising on our platform just because someone they talked to at a conference told them they should. And what ends up happening is they waste a ton of money and time on the wrong platform for their stage and for their product. And then they throw up their hands and they say ads just don't work. So in today's video, I'm gonna show you exactly where you should be advertising based upon where you're at with your company and who you're selling to. And my name is Alessandro Kutri, and I've worked with 50 plus B2B SaaS, AI, and tech companies and helped them generate millions in revenue and in pipeline. And this exact framework and thought process is what we walk through every single client before we actually spend a single dollar on ads. So let's get right into it. All right, so there's 3 platforms that come up in every single client conversation that I have. And what I want you to do is be able to understand the pros and cons of each platform and which ones you should be leveraging based upon your situation. So the 3 main platforms that most SaaS companies are marketing on, now there is more, there's like YouTube, Reddit, and some different smaller ad platforms as well, but the majority of SaaS companies are on these platforms, which are Google, LinkedIn, and Meta. We're gonna talk about the pros and cons of each, starting with Google. Now the pros of Google is that it's high intent traffic and it's easier to close. So people are actively searching for your product when they find you through a Google ad. And so when they book a call with you, they're a lot easier to close because of the fact that there's a lot of high intent with them obviously looking up a solution like yours. The cons is that it has a ceiling and not every single SaaS product has meaningful search volume. So let me first talk about why it has a ceiling. So there's only so many people that are searching for your product right now every single month. So when you start to scale spend, you almost hit a wall because of the fact that there's, let's say, only 2,000 people searching for HR software every single month. You can only ever reach those 2,000 people. Now, what you can do to get around that is opening up to broader search terms. The issue with that is that then you're bringing a lot lower quality traffic that comes through the funnel. So it kind of defeats the purpose in terms of what Google is actually known for. And the second con, like I briefly went over, which is not every SaaS product has meaningful search volume. So if you're selling a new disruptive technology or a new SaaS that's coming to market and there's not a lot of search volume actively for that SaaS, then you're going to be in trouble here with Google because of the fact that people aren't looking for your product. So if you have this new AI SaaS that does a specific thing for manufacturers, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to sell that because people aren't looking that up. So that's what the pros and cons of Google really are. Now, the pros and cons of LinkedIn ads is that, first of all, there's really good targeting on LinkedIn. You can actually target by job title, and it's probably the best targeting out of any platform just because you can get really granular with who you want to go after. And really, this is going to be best for mid-market and enterprise where you need specific decision makers. So let's say you sell a B2B SaaS only to healthcare enterprise executives, then this is probably going to be your platform that you want to start with because of the fact that you can really narrow in on your targeting, which you can do with Meta, which I'll get in a second, but it's going to be great for those more mid-market to enterprise style deals. Now, the issues with LinkedIn is that it's very expensive. So if you're not prepared to drop $1,000 per meeting, then you should definitely stay away from LinkedIn because you're going to need to be dropping that type of money just because the CPMs and the CPCs are a lot higher than they are on both Google and Meta itself. So that is number one, is you want to make sure that you are looking at your numbers to make sure that it actually makes sense for you. So you need to check your numbers because if not, then you're going to be wasting a lot of money on LinkedIn. I've talked with a lot of founders who've wasted a lot of money on LinkedIn. So this is one of the ones that you want to make sure that you're okay with paying $1,000 cost per call if it comes to it. Let's go to the third advertising platform, which is one of my favorites, which is Meta. The pros of Meta is the fact that it is cheaper CPMs across LinkedIn and Google, and there is much bigger scale. And there's AI intent that is really good at finding people that are in market for your solution. So LinkedIn just rolled out a version of this AI targeting, but it's not as good as Meta. And the thing about Meta is it's able to analyze behavior signals and see exactly who is clicking on ads similar to your ad and who's opting in and booking calls and actually closing deals with your similar competitors, so they know exactly who to show your ad to. And the reason that Meta actually works really well is the fact that it's able to target more of your target market. So for example, there's only so many people on LinkedIn that are scrolling, but on Meta, there's over 3 billion people that are actively scrolling on Meta. So your target market is for sure there, and you can reach them at a fraction of the cost. And so you really get good efficiency in terms of your actual dollar to conversion. And you also are able to scale it up because when it does work, you're able to branch out to more decision makers, whereas opposed to LinkedIn, it's a little bit harder to scale because there's typically a finite amount of people on LinkedIn, and same thing with Google. Hey, real quick, if you're watching this and you're not confident you're on the right platform right now, that's exactly what we help SaaS companies figure out. We look at your ICP, your budget, your growth stage, and your offer and tell you exactly where your money should be going. Then we build you the whole system out and guarantee to get your ads profitable within 90 days. So if that sounds interesting at all, there's a link below to book a call with our team to be able to go over that. Anyways, back into it. So now that we've talked to the pros and cons of each platform, what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to make a decision on which ad platform to use just because it worked for somebody else, right? You need to understand that your situation is most likely different, and you want to be able to approach it in a logical way in terms of which platforms you want to be running on. So you're going to want want to ask yourself these 4 different questions. First of all, what does your subscription model look like, and do your numbers work? So this is the most important question that you should ask yourself before you start running ads, is looking at your numbers and understanding what your potential LTV is if you don't already have that modeled out, what your churn is, and then figuring out what your gross profit is, because that's going to determine how much you can spend to acquire a customer and what your payback period is going to look like. And then the second thing you want to ask yourself is, are you driving to a demo or straight to a checkout? Because that's going to also change your numbers. So for example, if you're running a more demo focused GDM strategy, you're going to want to account for that when you are modeling out your numbers, as opposed to if you're running straight to checkout. And then also you're going to want to ask yourself how much you're willing to spend to test properly. If you only have a budget of $100 a day, then your best bet is going to be Meta, because you're not going to be able to get enough volume on either Google or LinkedIn for even to even be worthwhile for you. So that's another question you want to ask yourself. And then also, what is your total addressable market? Who are you targeting, right? If you're targeting, like I said, mid-market to enterprise companies, LinkedIn may be the best bet for you. But if you're targeting small to medium-sized businesses or anything in that range, then Meta might be the best. And so you want to be able to work through exactly where your target market's going to be, what's going to be the best platform for it. So here's a decision framework that you guys can use. And obviously you can do more extensive research into each of these and then come up with your own. This is what I've typically found best to recommend for our clients. If you're a small TAM, for example, you're going after the mid-market or enterprise market, then you are probably best to go on LinkedIn, right? And you have some money to test this properly. So you have about a $5,000 to $6,000 budget. LinkedIn's going to be great for you. Now, if you have a large TAM and you're able to target small, medium-sized businesses, you have a good offer, which we'll talk about in a second. Meta is going to be your best return that you'll get out of any of these platforms, just because you have so much scale with it. Once you find a winning ad, you can just throw more spend behind it. You don't have to worry about hitting a wall. Now for Google, I always recommend using it as a supplemental channel, not as the only channel to scale with, just because like I mentioned earlier, it does end up hitting a wall. And so what you want to be able to use it for is to capture demand that's already there for your product. So if you're spending $2,000, $3,000, as long as you're profitable on Google itself, you should just leave it going every single month and not really touch it, not try to scale it. So it's more of a supplemental factor that you can use. And there's some different strategies that you can use with both Google, Meta, and LinkedIn that I'll talk to you about in terms of how to actually get all these to work together. So one way that you can get these to work together is by obviously using Meta or LinkedIn plus Google and retargeting people that, for example, click on your Google ad on either Meta or on LinkedIn, right? So for example, if someone searches your company up, they don't convert, and then they go on Meta, now you hit them with a retargeting ad that gets them to then book a call. So you can get you can get an overall better cost per call using a strategy like that. So like I said, you should typically use Google plus another supplemental platform. And if you don't have a big budget, then you should just use Meta, because that's going to be your best bang for your buck and be able to get you a ROI that you're looking for right away with really a small budget. So here are the 3 things that you should be doing before you actually spend a single dollar on ads. Is you want to make sure that you have a cold offer. You want to make sure that you craft a cold traffic offer. Now I have other videos that I talk about how to do this, but really it is about emphasizing the outcome that you provide to folks, the value that you provide, and actually writing out the value so they understand it completely, as well as maybe attaching some type of guarantee to the actual offer itself. Now the next thing that you want to create is have really good funnels and landing pages that basically guide prospects through your whole customer journey while educating them on what is it that you do. Make sure you have demo videos in there, make sure you have case studies, testimonials. And the last, the most important thing is knowing your numbers. Like I mentioned earlier, is you want to make sure that you can model out exactly what your CAC should look like, what your payback period look like, what's your LTV, so you can determine which of these platforms is going to be able to support your CAC, and you know exactly what targets you want to hit. All right, that is basically all I have for you guys. So let's wrap this up. The reason so many SaaS companies waste money on ads isn't because ads don't work. It's because they either pick the wrong platform for their stage and their product. And no amount of good creative or good targeting is going to fix that. So get the platform right first, match it to your ICP, your budget, and where you're at as a company, and then build everything else around it. And when you do that, ads stop feeling like a gamble and start feeling like a system. So if you want our team to help you figure out exactly which platform makes the most sense for your business right now, there's a link below where you can book a call. We'll walk through it together. Other than that, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take it easy. Ciao.